The story begins on the edge of a quiet lake, where the water shimmered in the morning sun and the forest framed everything in a green, peaceful embrace. It was a kind of place people dreamed of escaping to, far from the noise of traffic, the stress of work, and the endless rules of suburban life. For one man, this cabin by the lake was more than a getaway. It was a family heirloom, a place built by his grandfather's hands, passed down through generations, and a reminder that some pieces of land carry more than just value. They carry history. But peace is a way of drawing unwanted attention. When developers bought the land surrounding the lake, they built a new gated neighborhood with big promises: community, exclusivity, and control. They formed an HOA almost instantly, and like so many before it, the board quickly grew drunk on power. What had once been a free and open lakeside now felt policed. They enforced rules about boats, fishing hours, even the color of curtains facing the water. The residents who had paid large sums for their lake houses accepted this. But the cabin on the far end of the shore did not fit their picture-perfect image. The cabin was rustic, with weathered wood, a private dock, and a fire pit out front. It didn't match the polished facade of the HOA homes, and the board saw it as a problem. At the center of that hostility was the HOA president, a woman the neighbors quietly called Karen, though never to her face. She was relentless, convinced that her authority extended over every inch of shoreline. To her, the cabin was not a proud piece of history, but a violation of the orders she demanded. At first, the HOA tried letters. They claimed the cabin owner needed to pay dues, follow architectural rules, and submit maintenance plans for approval. The letters went unanswered. Next came fines, printed in bold red numbers, escalating month after month. But the cabin owner ignored them all. He knew something the HOA didn't. His land was not part of their community, not governed by their rules, and never would be. That truth only made Karen angrier. She began showing up in person, storming down the dirt path to the cabin to confront him. She accused him of freeloading, of lowering property values, of refusing to comply. He remained calm, never once raising his voice, but he never yielded either. His refusal to bow to her demands only inflamed her obsession. To her, it was not about rules anymore. It was about control. One summer afternoon, the standoff reached its breaking point. Karen marched to the cabin again, her clipboard in hand, her voice sharp as she declared that he was trespassing. Trespassing on his own family's land. When he refused to leave, she did the one thing she believed would settle it once and for all. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911. The call was loud and dramatic. She told the dispatcher that a man was refusing to vacate her community's property, that he was a threat, and that police needed to come immediately. She stood tall, arms crossed, certain that this time the law would be on her side. To her, flashing lights and a police presence would end the matter. Minutes later, the sound of sirens cut through the quiet lake air. Police cars rolled down the gravel road, and officers stepped out, ready to assess the situation. Karen rushed to them, speaking quickly, pointing at the cabin, painting the homeowner as some kind of squatter. She was so sure the truth didn't matter because her title, her authority, and her voice were enough. But when the officers turned to the cabin owner, the balance shifted. Calmly, without fanfare, he walked inside and returned with a leather case. Inside were documents older than the HOA itself, deeds, maps, and records that didn't just prove ownership of the cabin, but something much larger. He handed the papers over, and the officers examined them carefully. What they revealed silenced even the most stubborn skeptic. Decades earlier, his grandfather had purchased not only the parcel where the cabin stood, but vast tracts of land around the lake. Over the years, pieces had been sold or leased, but certain rights had never been surrendered. Through a web of contracts and county filings, the family had retained ownership of key areas, including the ground beneath much of the HOA precious community. The cabin owner wasn't just a resident. In legal terms, he was practically their landlord. His family's name was on the documents that defined the boundaries of the county itself. The officers closed the case quickly. There was no trespassing, no violation, no squatter. The land was his, legally, fully, and indisputably. Karen's face burned red as she realized she had not only failed but humiliated herself in front of both the police and the neighbors who had gathered to watch. The HOA president who thought she owned the lake had been shown the truth. She couldn't control even a fraction of it. Word spread quickly. Neighbors whispered about the documents, about how the man at the cabin technically owned the land under their very feet. For years, they had believed the HOA board held the power. Now they realized that the man they had tried to push out had more authority than any of them. Karen avoided the cabin after that, her confidence shaken. The HOA stopped sending letters, stopped issuing fines, and for once, left him in peace. For the cabin owner, it wasn't about revenge. He didn't evict anyone, didn't demand rent, didn't exercise the full power the documents gave him. All he had ever wanted was to live quietly by the lake, in the cabin his grandfather built, without harassment. The HOA had forced his hand, and when he showed them the truth, it was enough. The cabins still stand today, as steady as a lake it overlooks. The dock creaks under the weight of fishing rods, the fire pit still glows on cool nights, and the forest keeps watch over the shoreline. To visitors, it looks like nothing more than a peaceful retreat. But to those who know the story, it is also a symbol, a reminder that power isn't always where it appears to be. Karen thought the HOA made her untouchable. She thought calling 911 would cement her authority. But the truth was larger than she ever imagined. The man she tried to push out didn't just own the cabin. He owned the history, the land, and, in ways she could never control, the county itself. Do like, subscribe for more.